I'm Kim Bailey and this is Floral Art Review. And this week we are looking at a split level design, so a defined design style that we've asked our AI DesignEye to analyse for us. This is from a competition about 3 years ago now that I competed at in a location that's about 4 hours drive from me, or 5 hours drive from home. So I relied on getting my plant material there, but I did take the container with me. Because it's a defined design style, I'm actually going to read to you the definition from the rule book, the rules under which this competition was judged. So it says that split level is a design using two containers at different levels, with or without bases. Materials are placed to form a dominant visual path linking the two containers to achieve unity and harmony. Pretty straightforward, and I think that on the very basics of that definition, this design meets that criteria. There was, however, considerable debate because the judge interpreted the definition in a slightly more formal way than we might have expected, and she explained that to us after she had done the judging. But there was still, and is still, I would have to say, continued debate about what constitutes a split level and whether, and it seems to be centred around whether both containers are on the same level. So you can see with mine that they're both on the bench, but there is some consideration that perhaps one of the bases should be above where the other base meets the design staging area. That's a whole other area of discussion that doesn't come into our assessment or our analysis today. So let's move on with what we've got in front of us. Spring Beauty was the title. It was a spring competition piece, and the space allows was 70 centimetres, so plenty of room to have that split level judged from the front. So the idea that I have there is that that was actually one container, or it is one container, gifted to me by a very dear friend who's no longer with us, and he always used it as one container. And I thought that perhaps I would use it as the two containers for the split level because I thought it really lent itself to that. Having the little window on the larger piece meant that I could have some material at the bottom of the design, and I knew that I'd be able to do the arch across the top to join the two pieces together. In it I've used, that's actually a crabapple blossoms that are coming up in the arch, so just the branches that are coming from one side to the other. There's some statice, there's some straw flowers, there's some lavender, and I just wanted it to look like it was, and chrysanthemums I can see there as well. I wanted it to look like it was bursting out with all of these things that come out in spring that you don't know where to look because there's just so many things that are happening in terms of spring. I was happy with the design, although I did feel that I hadn't got the proportions right. That the vertical lines on the right hand side were a little bit too far away from the rest of the design, so there was nothing that really took your eye up there completely. I needed a bit more status around them, or something else, that little ammonium, something that would engage you to go up there but still see that below, just below that, there was this arch, that there was this joining of these two containers. I think perhaps there's the current thinking is that you have very similar designs in both containers. Naturally enough, I don't think that's necessary, but I'm always contrary. But I have tried to mimic what I've used on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, by having the straw flowers and the chrysanthemums down in the bottom part of the container, the window. That doesn't work as well as I wanted it to. The other thing that, I know that the definition says with or without bases, but this needs a base. This needs something to bring it together, so some sort of circular or semicircular base, that perhaps a semicircular one that reflected the arch would enhance the design. I also think, now looking at the image, that the containers are too dominant, that I haven't, whilst they're a good contrast in terms of the textures, and they don't compete in terms of colour, there's still the solidity of them is too much. All of that said, let's see what AI has got to say, DesignEye has got to say about this design. Overall impression, first of all, the arrangement presents a joyful seasonal interpretation of spring through vibrant florals and earthy ceramic containers. The split-level concept is clearly attempted with the two vessels of differing heights and the bridging floral material. So, the basis of what the definition of split level was. And I will say that when we give the image to DesignEye, to our AI, all I said in the instructions was that this is a defined design style. I didn't give it the definition. So it has gone out and looked at a whole range of other images out there that are about split level floral art and determined what the definition should be against those images. We look now specifically at the principles and elements of design, which is how we are always judged. With line, first of all, positive. The arching floral line from left to right effectively connects the two levels and draws the eye through the design. That's good. Now, there's an opportunity there. The vertical lines on the right are a little congested and might benefit from more spacing to enhance rhythm and clarity. And I think that's very true. I think it's very much weighted to one side, even though the container on the left-hand side balances it somewhat. There's just a bit too much floral material in the smaller of the containers, and I would still have got the same effect that I wanted, that bursting out of spring, with a little bit less of the floral material towards the bottom of that grouping. Form. Strong cylindrical forms are created by the pottery vessels. The bridging material is delicate and contrasts well against the rigid ceramic shapes. In fact, yes, it does, and that's probably good in terms of the solidity of those two containers, but I would like to see it come up a little bit higher, the arch. So to me, it's quite a flat arch there. I'd like to be more domed, and I would actually like to see a little bit less in that. I'd like to see it a little bit more airy as well, make it just like it was floating between one and the other. Colour. A fresh spring-like palette is used, pinks, purples and greens against neutral tone vessels. The repetition of colours between the two containers provides unity, especially with the use of straw flowers and lavender. So I can see that I have kept that rhythm and repetition of the colours. There's probably a little bit, it's the pink of the straw flowers is quite dominant, but I haven't got any in the top of the taller of the containers, and I think it needs that. My eye is looking sort of at the repetition of those colours and those forms, and I'm looking across the arch to see where is it mimicked at the top of that container as well. So that's another thing that I would look at improving. Texture, varied and interesting. Smooth ceramics, papery straw flowers, soft foliage and wispy status. The contrast between container and plant material adds tactile interest. Yes, it does, but as I said earlier, I think it's the actual form and solidity of the containers is a little bit too dominant, particularly the taller one in this instance. And I perhaps needed to drape some of the plant material down over that. I'm just thinking as I'm looking at it, or I could have had things linking the two containers coming in the opposite direction to the arch that goes over the top. The drawback with me doing these videos is that I don't see this result from AI until I start to do the video, and so while I'm reading it, I'm already thinking about what I would do and what I should have done, and it's a hazard for me making these videos live, as it were. Let's move on. Space, some crowding on the right side, Greater spacing between flower heads would improve visual flow and depth, and that's very much what I thought when I mentioned when I first looked at the design. The window on the lower left container is an intriguing use of negative space and could have been highlighted further with lighter colour placement or more open structure. So I filled that space with the flowers, and what it's saying is that there could have been less in there as well. So two very appropriate suggestions in terms of getting the right balance in the space in the design. So balance. Visual weight is reasonably distributed between the two containers, especially with the linking arch. Yeah. However, the taller right-hand grouping feels more dominant. The left base could be enhanced slightly for greater equilibrium. So again, repeating what we talked about in terms of the visual balance and the negative space. And we just need, and I just need, the royal we, I just need to really step back and think about that in terms of designs, because quite often we are drawn into having this, particularly in spring when so much is available and we want to showcase everything in its beauty. We use too much, and we really need to have space so that every flower has its space. I'm just thinking of, there was a wonderful floral designer many years back who used to say, she'd come along when she was judging and she'd say, every flower has a face, every face should be seen. So always in the back of my mind. Thank you, Mari. Rhythm. Created successfully through repetition of flower forms and arching movement, would be stronger with more refined height gradation in the upright elements on the right. So again, something that I mentioned earlier is that there's the top pink straw flower placements, then there's a big gap, and then there's this bulk of material underneath it. And so I just needed to graduate those heights better on that side of things. Proportion. The size of the flowers is appropriate to the containers. A stronger horizontal emphasis might better define the split level concept. That might happen if I had something that wasn't very much horizontal. So perhaps it's a base that is clearly a horizontal space or form that would lift the, I'm just thinking now as I do it, if I lifted the taller container up, that's going to bring the arch up higher. It's going to bring in the vertical placements, so that might actually work. Unity, colour, material repetition and container texture tie the design together effectively. So it's saying that's a unified design. I think it is in those terms, but I think it could be done better. I think it could be unified better if there was a base that they were sitting on, something that brought the two containers together, particularly on that black staging material that's there. Strengths. So the strength of the design, clear seasonal theme, thoughtful container choice with complementary colour and textural contrast, engaging visual movement through the linking arc. So they're the strengths of the design. The suggestions now. Firstly, clarify the levels. Introduce stronger height contrast or horizontal displacement between the two containers to more clearly define the split level requirement. You can see me nodding my head. This is very much something that I think it needs, and I think actually that lifting the taller of the containers up higher would just make such a difference. It wouldn't have to be a lot, we're only talking about an inch, maybe an inch and a half, just to clearly define that this container is here and it's linked by this. Still have the arch there that's going to be more like a cascade at that point in time, which still joins the two and is a good way of joining the two. Number 2, refine the right grouping. Consider removing some flower heads or increasing spacing to reduce congestion and better showcase individual elements. So we talked about that all the way through, and I think that's a very valid suggestion. Enhance negative space. Feature the window cutout more prominently, perhaps by using lighter or more open florals inside to contrast against the background. So where I've got what it's suggesting there for the window part is that where I've got them all poking out, if I had them inside, and if that container was raised, it would give you some intrigue, it would give you some depth, certainly, and it would make you, you'd still, because of the colour, the pink of the straw flowers, you'd still be able to see them in there, but it would be an interesting twist to the design. So yes, something, and once again, that I would consider. Base cohesion. A base element, a shared mat or connecting mechanic, might visually unify both containers and reinforce the structural relationship. So once again, I could have had, let's think about if I had that taller container lifted up high enough, I could have something that was coming from the window across to the top of the next container, or just having a base that it was sitting on that brought the two together. And then when you're thinking about a base, it's what sort of a base would you have, what colour, and all those sorts of things. And I think I'd have to stay with the neutral tones. I think I'd probably do it something that was like a bark. I'd probably paint it, but in the same colours as is in the containers, but make it look a little bit more like it was bark rather than another pottery piece there, because we don't want it to dominate the design. So the final notes for this design: a fresh and optimistic expression of spring with strong thematic unity and use of natural materials. Small structural refinements would elevate the spatial clarity and bring the split level intent to the forefront. Once again, with so many of the designs that we've looked at through this process, there's just small things that need to be changed. It's not that it's a bad design. It's not that it should be discarded out of hand. It's that there's small refinements to the design that you could try out. And certainly there's things there that I will definitely try out next time I do a split level design. It's about this whole process using DesignEye, or AI, to look at your designs, is about encouraging you to think a little bit further than you did when you put the design together. Now that you've had the benefit of time and hindsight to look back at a design and say, yeah, I can see how that would work, or I hadn't thought of that, I might try that. Also, if you're about to enter a competition and you would like a little bit of an edge to make sure that your design is the best it possibly could be in terms of your artistic abilities, then same thing, you can upload an image of it and have DesignEye look at it and say to you, these are some just suggestions you might like to think about in terms of how it's going to be judged. Both very valid ways for you to use our AI DesignEye to improve your floral art creations and to help you on your floral art education journey. So I encourage you to visit the website, follow the instructions there, and within about 24 hours you'll get a similar analysis to what we've gone through in each of these videos that is specific to your design. With that, I'll leave you for this week. I'm Kim Bailey and this is Floral Art Review.